so thrilled to have Mark here joining us today to talk about where publishing is heading and where online advertising is heading through the eyes of a forward-thinking publisher. So Mark recently published a book, for those of you who aren't familiar with his work, called Faster, Higher, Stronger, which I can't wait to read. And it's about how science and technology are impacting athletes in their drive to gain a competitive edge. Is that a good characterization of it?
It's a great characterization. I should have you as my agent.
Okay, so is that also life for publishers these days? Is it faster, higher, stronger?
Yeah, I think there are lessons you can learn from that world. To me, the most interesting lesson that I learned in writing the book was the importance of a concept that especially British athletics has called improvement through the accumulation of marginal gains. Okay. And that is, we as humans tend to look for like a silver bullet for everything, right? It's like one big solution to a problem. What the British cycling team in particular did was think about not, I need to find something that makes my athletes 10% better, or even at that level, 1% better is a huge difference. But I'm going to look for 100 things that make me 100% better. And it's much easier to actually find lots and lots of small improvements and stack those on top of each other. They sort of accrue like interest rather than sort of finding yourself in that place where you almost get sort of like pulled in on yourself. It's like, well, I can't solve this huge problem all at once, and so it can't be solved.
Mm-hmm. So would you say also there's no silver bullet, there's no one solution for publishers as they think about evolving to a more competitive state in the future?
Yeah, I don't think there's one solution for publishers at all. I think the type of publisher you are changes what works for you. I think the size of your audience, I think what your audience is passionate about, how you can build relationships with them in different ways. I think there are tons and tons of different ways that publishers will find success in the future. Okay,
so talk to us about some of the techniques that Wired is using, some of those lead bullets, to your point, that add up to incremental success.
Right. The biggest experiment that we just embarked on about a month ago is we are intercepting people who are running ad blocking software on our site.
Yep.
And asking them to make a choice. We're asking them to whitelist us and allow them to see our advertising.
You've got a very, technically inclined audience.
Right.
And so are you seeing ad blocking rates? What are you seeing?
We're seeing rates. I mean, we were just hearing about that on stage. We're seeing rates in that ballpark. About those same sorts of rates. So we're asking those users to do one of two things. We're asking them to whitelist us, or we're saying if you don't want to support us through advertising, we need you to support us in another way, and we're offering them a subscription that gives them an ad-free version of the site for about $1 a week.
Okay, and how's it going?
It's going, I think we're really happy with how it's going. It's an experiment. It's a new thing that we're trying. We've been really happy with the whitelist conversion rates. We're pleased with those. We've been pleased with how many people are subscribing. Mm-hmm. We've been pleased with the conversations that we've been having with users, like really in-depth. I'm on a lot of email threads with users now talking about why we're doing this. Like, it's amazing when you run a publisher or content business to realize how little your users understand how your business works, which once you say that isn't surprising. Like, I don't understand how many businesses that I interact actually work at a fundamental level, but I think we're at a point where we're able to have a more sophisticated conversation in the, not just in this marketplace, but with readers, with users on this is how you get access to this content. This is how we pay for the 100 journalists who are working every day to publish 50, 60, 70 stories a day. This is what we need to be supported, and we're going to ask you to be part of that.
So what's the impact? I mean, how do you see this playing out? Do you see this as being something that impacts the way that you go to market broadly, or will this be confined to a set of your users? How do you see this playing out?
I would say that's the biggest conversation we're having internally right now is we've sort of built a proof of concept and have some things that we've learned. We have some things we want to tweak and change on this product, and we're working on that. But then it inevitably leads us to larger discussions on, what does it mean to to subscribe to Wired? Can we bundle print and digital in interesting ways? Can we find ways that really hopefully cement a user and reader's connection with us as a brand and not as just a place that they get to through social media or something?
Mm-hmm. So obviously this does fit in some ways under the umbrella of user experience,
right.
The way that you're engaging with users. Something that's been talked about a lot already over the course of today. Native advertising is something that our head of product talked about earlier this morning. He said, WTF, why are banners still around? Why isn't native advertising taken over? Where does Wired sit on this one?
Last year we launched a program that we call Wired Brand Lab, which it's a creative agency inside of Wired, and we work with partners. Perhaps our biggest partnership last year was with Nokia, and we create native content for those partners. We have a pool of people who understand Wired and how we tell stories, who are not on the edit team, who work with those partners to do that. We have they have access to the tools and technologies that we use to tell stories, and we've been really thrilled with the response. It's both. I think it's easy to get a good response from the ad side of the equation, from the ad marketplace, but the reader response has actually been solid. Like when you bring those storytelling tools in really robust ways and integrate with the content. I mean, we were talking last night about some of these things, and advertising, I come from magazines, advertising felt organic to the experience. You hear people talk about in magazines like Vogue that the ads are better than the edit sometimes. And while I don't necessarily aspire to that state, having them be on the same plane, I think that's what's happened with banners, right? Is like banners have been devalued so much. They don't even exist on the same plane as the content itself anymore for users. Like, especially if you're putting them in the places that they're usually placed, it's like all of us have learned not to see this part of a web page just because we know that
right.
It's not content. Yeah. Ad blindness is an issue.
So Matthew from Cloudflare was just talking about distribution platforms like Google's AMP.
Right.
We've talked earlier about Facebook Instant Articles. I know that you personally and Wired have experience in dealing with and thinking through how, as a publisher, you adopt these platforms or don't adopt these platforms.
Right.
How are you thinking about those?
It's a balancing act. I think Matthew made a very strong point that you start to see control in a relationship with your audience when you're interacting with them on somebody else's platform. So that's a risk for us, right? The flip side is you kind of gotta fish where the fish are, and as more and more people are looking to these other platforms and spending their times, I would say more Facebook in this case than Google. Google isn't a destination where people spend time. With the AMP project, those results are so privileged in the search thing, that's certainly an issue. But when people spend so much time on Facebook, there's a little bit of that's where you need to be there in a way that services that audience and that starts to build that connection. Traditionally publishers have used that to drive to their O&O. It'll be interesting to see how, as Instant Articles opens up to more and more publishers, what happens in the newsfeed, how those things are privileged against other stories that might be a link, and sort of where the market goes from there.
Mm-hmm. So we have a room full of publishers here. Channel the British Cycling Organization for a moment.
Okay.
If there's 2 or 3 pieces of advice that you would impart, the lead bullet strategy for
right.
how publishers can position themselves for greater and enhanced competitiveness moving forward, what would you impart?
I mean, data is crucial, I think, in this conversation. I still think generally on the publishing side, we're less sophisticated about our usage of data and feeding that back into not just our edit, but how we talk to our audiences, what our audiences are looking for, how they think about them. I don't want our editors writing stories only because they seem like they might perform well, but I want to make sure that we're deploying our resources as usefully as possible. And so really digging into that data, I think, is a crucial thing. It's that classic Drucker, what gets measured gets managed. edit has always been a gut thing, and so I think being able to bring together the quantitative and qualitative is a very powerful notion. I think the other one is thinking about how, to me, it's about that conversation with the audience. And that conversation is ongoing in everything you do. Like, the stories you publish are part of that conversation, how you promote them on social media, how you talk to your audience on social media, how you respond to them when they email you, how you try and make them feel. I don't want readers. I love readers who come to Wired once and read a Twitter, see a link on Twitter, come to Wired, might not even know they're at Wired, read it and leave. Like, that's great. Even better is if I can make them have a relationship with me, where they see our name, where they want to read something because it's our story, not because a friend linked to it, where they follow us on social media, where I sort of move them up that relationship with the brand. And so being really holistic about how you have that conversation and think about that sort of funnel. Like, I think most people with edit backgrounds don't think about that funnel necessarily, and I think that's a crucial thing to do.
Right. Excellent. So you heard it here. Publishers need to train like athletes, leverage data, focus on user experience, and
hopefully we'll get a little bit better every day and keep moving forward. That's what we try and do. I mean, coaches talk about this idea of winning the day, right? That every day you go into the gym or you go to train, and like you need to get a little bit better at something each day. And we actually talk about that, especially in our product and tech teams. It's like, can we optimize one little piece of code today? Can we get this improvement in? Can I make sure that I'm helping my editors with their workflow so that person doesn't have to wait 10 seconds for that thing to publish, but waits 5 seconds? Each of those incremental improvements, over the past year, we've seen huge gains in site performance. We've seen huge gains in readership, and I think it's from that sort of growth mindset.
Excellent. Mark, thank you so much. All the best to you and Wired. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks.